What's the scariest thing you have learned about the human brain? Dr. Lyle had spent decades studying the human brain, its synapses, its complex neural networks, and the electric impulses that danced within. But on a dark November night, he discovered something that unsettled him to his core. His newest patient, a man named Carl, had come to him for a routine brain scan. But when Dr. Lyle reviewed Carl's scan, he noticed an unusual shadow, a faint, almost undetectable smudge, nestled deep within the frontal lobe. It didn't resemble any known tumor or anomaly. Intrigued, Dr. Lyle ordered more tests. This shadow appeared to pulse faintly, in perfect synchronization with Carl's heartbeat. But it wasn't just the pulsing that caught his attention. As Dr. Lyle ran Carl through a series of tests, he noticed something eerie. When Carl experienced different emotion, the shadow changed. When he laughed, it shrank, fading almost to nothing. When he grew angry, it darkened and became more defined, almost as though it were responding, feeding off Carl's emotions. Dr. Lyle couldn't shake the feeling that this shadow was something alive, something with intent. He scanned other patients, combing through hundreds of cases, and found nothing similar. Finally, driven by curiosity and a creeping sense of dread, he scanned himself. His pulse quickened as he examined his own brain scan. For there it was, the same shadow, identical in size and shape, nestled in his own frontal lobe, pulsing steadily. As days passed, he began to feel its presence. Subtle at first, like a faint tingling in the back of his mind, growing stronger each day. In quiet moments, he could feel it lurking, a silent observer within him. It wasn't long before he found the same shadow in others' patients, colleagues, strangers. It was as if humanity had a hidden passenger, an ancient presence sleeping within, watching, waiting. And Dr. Lyle was left with a terrifying question. What was it waiting for?
Story number 2.
Evelyn had always been fascinated by the way the brain stored memories. As a neuroscientist, she knew memories were delicate things, fragments of experience filed away in the brain's intricate architecture. Her life's work was focused on finding out why some memories lasted, while others faded like mist. One day, she came across an anomaly while studying brain scans from a long-term memory retention experiment. In one subject, she noticed a faint, web-like pattern overlaying the hippocampus, where memories are processed and stored. It was thin, almost invisible, yet intricately woven, like a ghostly net. She monitored the subject over weeks, and to her horror, noticed a troubling trend. This web seemed to expand over time, almost as though it were absorbing the brain matter around it, creeping outward with an insidious hunger. What was even more unsettling was how the subject's memory began to degrade. One day, they'd recall vivid details from their childhood, but by the next, even basic facts about their own family slipped through their grasp like grains of sand. It was as if the web were feeding on their memories, growing stronger as their sense of self withered. Driven by a need to understand, Evelyn examined her own brain scan. Her pulse quickened as she spotted it, the same faint, web-like structure lurking within her hippocampus. For days, she tried to dismiss it as a trick of the light or a flaw in the imaging, but the chilling evidence was undeniable. She realized with a sinking dread that the memories she had cherished, faces of loved ones, treasured moments, were slipping away. Each memory forgotten seemed to fuel the growth of the web, which now spread its dark tendrils through her mind. Desperation overtook her as she scrambled to find a solution. Immersing herself in the research, barely eating or sleeping, she tried every known neural therapy, every experimental technique, but nothing slowed the spread. Night after night, she felt the creeping emptiness as fragments of her life dissolved, consumed by the relentless parasite lurking in her brain. The terror reached a fever pitch when she awoke one morning and couldn't remember her sister's face. The memory was there like a ghostly impression, but it was thin, distant, slipping away faster each time she tried to grasp it. The sounds of laughter, the warmth of her sister's hand, all gone, as though they'd been drained from her mind. She began leaving notes for herself around her apartment, desperate to hold on to something, anything of who she had once been. Then, late one night, as she pored over her fading notes, she found something disturbing, a passage in her own handwriting describing her discovery, but written in a way she couldn't remember. She read it over and over, her heart pounding as she realized she had no recollection of ever documenting it. It was as if she were reading the work of a stranger, an account of a terrifying journey that she couldn't remember embarking on. The days blurred. She forgot her mother's voice, the sound of her own laughter, even her own name. Memories blinked out of existence like stars winking out in an endless night sky, leaving her in a growing darkness she couldn't escape. By the end, Evelyn was left staring blankly at her own notes, her hands trembling as she traced the words she could no longer understand. The memory thief had claimed her, leaving her a hollow sheller mind adrift in the void, consumed by the very anomaly she had once sought to understand.
Story number 3.
Dr. Aaron Reed was a respected neurologist known for his work on auditory hallucinations. Patients often came to him with reports of hearing voices, whispers that seemed to come from within their own heads. He attributed it to overactive neurons, auditory hallucinations caused by stress or trauma. One of his most recent patients, Anna, was different. Anna was convinced the voices she heard were real. She spoke of faint whispers, like 1,000 voices murmuring just below the surface of her consciousness. At night, the voices would grow louder, calling her name, asking her questions she could never quite understand. Curious, Dr. Reed ran a series of tests, expecting to find some anomaly in her auditory cortex. Instead, what he found was something he couldn't explain. As Anna heard these voices, her brain waves showed an unusual pattern, distinct rhythmic pulse that resonated in perfect harmony with the voices. It was as though her brain was acting like an antenna, tuning into a signal from somewhere. The more he probed, the more Dr. Reed felt an unsettling chill. He began to hear whispers himself, faint at first but growing louder with each passing day. He tried to dismiss it as a side effect of exhaustion, but the whispers became persistent, forming words that called his name, beckoning him to listen. One night, unable to resist, he recorded his own brain waves while the whispers echoed in his mind. The results were horrifying. His brain waves matched Anna's exactly, following the same rhythmic pulse, as though resonating with an unknown frequency. It dawned on him that these whispers weren't hallucinations. They were a form of communication, a hidden language buried deep within the mind, waiting to be heard. As he listened closer, the voices grew clearer, speaking in an ancient, indecipherable tongue. They spoke not to his ears, but directly to his brain, bypassing any rational comprehension. And then, just as suddenly as they had started, the whisper stopped, leaving him in silence. But Dr. Reed knew he would never truly be alone again. The whispers would return, waiting to share their secrets, lurking in the shadows of his own mind.